Good evening and happy New Year of struggle. I wanted to check in with comrades across the country, across the globe. Want to see who was up. Um, Share some different thoughts. What does the new year portend? Where are we at with the anti-imperialist struggle? I'll share some of the poems I've been working on. The rest of the Midwestern Marx family is with family or resting, but we thought it was important just to check in. New Year's Eve. It's already 2024 here in New York City. They had the typical fake materialistic festivities down on 42nd Street, about 200 blocks down from me. But let's let the comrades join. We'll start off, as always, with the international, and we'll come back with some revolutionary Yiddish lands, a little bit of poetry here. Couldn't go to sleep in 2024 without sharing some final anti-capitalist moments with our Midwestern Marx family. And also, I wanted to ask everybody, who is your sellout of the year? Who is the top sellout of 2023? I took a poll today. We're gonna look at the results of the poll. A year of struggle, of course, spearheaded by our heroic sisters and brothers in Gaza, in occupied 48. And what has 2023 revealed to us about the class struggle, the global class struggle? So here comes the international. We'll come back with who do the people think was the top sellout of 2023? Happy New Year of struggle. Let's look at these results. I haven't looked yet. I asked earlier in the day on Instagram, who do people think deserved the prize for the top sellout of 2023? I mean, that's quite a distinguished honor or dishonor, ignominious title. The struggle for Palestine, I don't know that we've lived in anything this acute. I've talked to comrades more experienced than myself in the class struggle. And what I heard was 1982 with the Israeli-US invasion of Lebanon. The misnamed Lebanese Civil War was really an internationalized war against the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, which had its headquarters in Beirut. That was the time of the two massacres, several massacres in the refugee camps where the Palestinians were, in West Beirut and in South Beirut, the Shatila and the Sabra massacres. But what we've lived through now, coming up on, I think it's 87 days today, depending where you are in the world, it's taking its toll across the world on all freedom-loving people, all anti-imperialist people. So, the definition of a sellout, because some people were saying, the top sellout was Joe Biden, but that would imply that we somehow had some type of confidence in Joe Biden. Sellout is a very different thing. A sellout, there's many synonyms. A sycophant, Uncle Tom, a Don Pepe, a patria, un vendido, someone who turns their back on the people. But that implies that they come from the people. When we talk about sellouts, we're talking about expectations. And in the recovery world, I just finished a recovery meeting to bring in the new year sober. We talk about expectations or a resentment in construction. So who do we have expectations for that sold us out? That gets to kind of the heart of the matter. And as uh, Female Rage says there, Bernie Sanders is a top candidate. We didn't expect Bernie Sanders to stand with Zionism, to stand with the ongoing genocide of Palestinian nationhood of the Palestinian people. That might be a good place to start too. The Holocaust and Zionism, in some ways, have similar goals. Believe it or not. Oh, Vaush. I don't. I'm a different generation than Vaush, so I can't really comment on to the extent that he's a massive sellout. For me, cutting my teeth in the streets, standing up against the police and standing up against gentrification and these like YouTube type personalities like Bausch, I don't even know how to pronounce his name, but he's not, he's not real. He's not real to me. Where we come from, those of us mentored by the Panthers and the Young Lords and the CPUSA when it was the CPUSA, and it was all about being in the streets. And, there was a lot to prove there. So for me, it feels too kind of in my heart of hearts like a generational thing. So I really couldn't call, Bosch a sellout because to me, he was never really nobody to begin with, but a talking head yapper. And if I'm mistaken, by all means, correct me. But I want to go right to the literature because, Zionism, why did they bring back modern Hebrew? Because they wanted to divorce the Jewish communities, the Jewish people, the working class, the legacy of working class Jewish resistance from Yiddish land. They wanted to create that disconnect. So Zionism does everything to wreck, ruin, destroy Yiddish. And Yiddish is the carrier of these revolutionary memories from Eastern Europe, from the Pale of Settlement, of all of the struggle against Tsarism, against anti-Semitism, against feudalism, against capitalism. At the turn of the century in 1900, 90% of worldwide Jewry, that is our Jewish sisters and brothers, 90% lived in Eastern Europe. And that's the history that they deny us today. And that's why we continue every Thursday night at 8 p.m. Midwestern Marx, the Institute has classes, ongoing classes on the true history of Palestine, on the true history of anti-Zionist struggle. So I'm going to read a page here, a passage from page 74. To militate under the constant threat of repression, trial, and prison. These are our Jewish sisters and brothers in the early 1900s fighting with the revolutionary spirit of their forefathers and foremothers, to militate under the constant threat of repression, struggle, trial, and prison, to accept a provisional life under the eye of the defensiva, abandoning any normal existence, to have from one day to the next to leave your town, perhaps emigrate, to deal with spies, to move around secretly, not sleep at home the night before a demonstration, not fall into the hands of anti-Semites, to wage constant rhetorical jousts with militants of rival organizations like the far, the extreme leftists, the ultras, these different rival ideological trends, to adapt to sudden changes in the situation or the line that refers to the Soviet Union and the direction that the Soviets were giving internationally. That was the stuff that everyday revolutionary heroism of the militant was made of. Many episodes of this being fixed in memory. And then it quotes a revolutionary named Yakov Greenstein. And we can come back to that in a second. But again, Nazism, the Holocaust, doesn't just rob us of 6 million Jewish sisters and brothers, the ancestors. It doesn't just rob us of 6 million socialist leaders, communist leaders, Poles, Russians who were killed just because of their nationality. And Norman Finkelstein talks about this, right, in the Holocaust industry, how Zionism, with the full backing of US imperialism, opportunistically remembers the Holocaust. Difficult to believe that they would misappropriate and turn some of this dialectical materialist history on its head for opportunistic purposes. And that's Finkelstein's central thesis, right? That they weaponize the Holocaust. I mean, what type of ideological entity would weaponize the Holocaust for their benefit? Well, that's the segue into Zionism. Zionism is founded upon this type of misappropriation of true Jewish history. The Holocaust doesn't just wipe out who I mentioned, the 12 million human beings I mentioned. And I don't know, we can talk about the African Holocaust. We can talk about the Holocaust of how many indigenous nations. But I don't know historically, factually, through the lens of dialectical materialism, the science that brought us together here. Shout out to Eddie, Noah and Carlos, really the foundation, the founders, but the extended Midwestern Marx family as well that grows every day. We wouldn't have met if it wasn't for dialectical materialism. We wouldn't have met if it wasn't for the modern social sciences. That's what we mean by Marxism, a lens through which to understand the world today. Nazism, the Holocaust, also wipes out 27 million of our sisters and brothers in the Red Army, in the Soviet Union, the partisans, everyday Soviet citizens, whether they spoke Ukrainian or Georgian or Russian or Azerbaijani or Armenian as a first language. Nazism attacked the entire Soviet Union. So for me, it's very peculiar that we hear about the 6 million Jewish sisters and brothers who perished, but we don't hear about everyone else who fought and resisted the Nazis and perished. And of course, the 27 million Soviets. So to keep going with this quote here from Revolutionary Yiddish Land, no more spiritual way and ancestral way to bring in 2024. What time is it out there here in New York City? It's, congratulations to the comrades in Colorado in the Mountain Standard Hour. Happy New Year. Happy anti-capitalist New Year. Happy New Year of struggle. We brought it in about 2 hours ago here in New York City, and it seems spiritually appropriate to come on and share a little bit with the family. The rest of the comrades are with family as well, but my family fell asleep, and it seemed nice to come on. Harold Dogbottom says, also remember the other Soviet peoples, the Tatars, the Shuvish, the Mordvin, the Mari, the Yakut, the Kalmyk, and so on. Too many to list here. Thank you, Harold. And yes, I mean, we've been robbed of so much history, and We got to keep this history alive. You know, history is a weapon. It's our weapon. And dialectical materialism is a weapon. And revolutionary Yiddishland, the true history, is kryptonite to Israel, to 48, to occupied Palestine. We have to resurrect this true history. Yakov Greenstein says, we put up red flags and banners and we held ourselves ready. When a shift came out, 1,000 workers, the young communists, placed themselves across the road, and a speaker gave an illegal speech agitating against the regime and for socialism. We threw leaflets to the wind and rapidly scattered before the police arrived. Yeah, back in the anti-Nazi times, they'd go up to the top floor of a building and they would put like two paint cans, almost like a seesaw, and then they would put 1,000 leaflets and they would hit the seesaw so that the leaflets dumped over Berlin and dumped over Munich, and then they would scatter, they would run for their lives as these socialist pamphlets, as these anti-Nazis pamphlets scattered over the cities of Germany. And we have to resurrect that true history because they have severely indoctrinated millions of our Jewish sisters and brothers who have ceased to be our sisters and brothers. They're anti-Palestinian, they're anti-human. They're the rank and file of Zionism that are carrying out a holocaust of human life right now. In Gaza, in the West Bank, we've been covering it, standing in solidarity, you know, and to look at Times Square, to look at 42nd Street and Megan the Stallion performing and just spiritually, I felt the same thing that I felt when I was 15 and 25 and 35. It was so fake. It was so plastic. It was so superficial. There's nothing wrong with dancing. But how do we dance when our people are perishing in Gaza? And they're resisting as well. Of course, they're resisting, but we can't tell any lies. They're up against a very, very powerful enemy, an enemy that can go like this and delist and shadow ban and completely ban our Twitter accounts. You know, to say that these Zionists and capitalists, they don't believe in freedom of speech. If they believed in freedom of speech, we'd be reaching hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands right now, but they've severely come at us. It's important to do an evaluation of how we've been impacted, but to continue with Yakov Greenstein's words, one of the ancestors. In 1935, at the age of 14 and a half, I was arrested for the first time at one of these anti-Nazi demonstrations. We were going to hold a meeting in front of a factory where a few years earlier, some workers had been killed by the police during a strike. It was a commemoration, but one of our people, who turned out to be a defensive agent, had denounced us. And while I was speaking, the police surrounded us. I finished my speech and they took me away. Despite my age, I was thrown into prison awaiting trial. A 14-year-old jailed by the fascists, by the Nazis in Lviv, in what was Yiddish land. And Yiddish land was destroyed. And the very memory, the very language of Yiddish land was destroyed. Female Rage says, I often feel alienated from others because I don't align politically with anyone I know, and I don't eat up the mainstream culture that Danny is speaking of. And that's why I went live. I went live for this very reason, just to bring in the new year, because we're family. You know, I don't know Female Rage, but I know her, or maybe I do. I don't know, but her words speak to us. In that isolation, that alienation. I published in these days at Black Agenda Report. Surely we can bring up the article. I published a piece on mass shootings, on random shootings, precisely for this reason, to connect with people across the global class struggle, across the world, who know that liberal analysis is vacuous, it's hollow, it's emptied of meaning, as is the dominant ideology of the Republican Party. In last year, we had about 675 mass shootings, random shootings. So I wanted to use my training, use the training of Marxism to write this piece, Murder Thy Neighbor, a recap of mass shootings in 2023, an anti-imperialist perspective. Shout out to the comrades at Black Agenda Report and Black Alliance for Peace and the Solidarity Committee. If you're not in touch with those comrades, by all means, follow them and check them out. Incredibly important anti-imperialist and Black liberation leadership. So this is about a 3-page piece. There's going to be a much larger analysis coming out at Counterpunch and at Midwestern Marx. The Institute's going to publish a much longer piece. This is kind of just a teaser, but we needed a Marxist analysis of why there's so many of these shootings, which are not random. They're not random whatsoever. Mass shootings have become ubiquitous in the U.S. as part of a gun-obsessed culture that manufactures and exports violence around the world. This pandemic of violence is a creation that serves ruling class objectives. So we'll do a longer analysis coming up on these mass shootings, why we had 675 mass shootings or random shootings in 2023. It's cannibalistic. It's cannibalistic. It's self-injurious. It's self-mutilating. It's a reflection of our low self-esteems. The mass shooting phenomena is ultimately a reflection of our alienation. Alienation from what? When Marx lays out alienation. Phenomenal piece, the Economic and Political Manuscripts, published, I think, in 1848. But what Marx and Engels look at is our alienation from ourselves, from our work, from the products of our work, and from our species, from our species being, from our people, from our class. And they go into depth about those 4 different ways of alienation. So that's what Female Rage spoke to, you know. And so look at 42nd Street as they drop the ball and everything, and to see the empty performances and everyone smiling as if Gaza didn't exist, because for Zionism, the Palestinians have never existed. Just like for white supremacy and for General Custer and Andrew Jackson, the Lakota never existed, and the Navajos. And all these indigenous nations weren't real to the colonizer, because to wipe out a people, you have to degrade a people. To wipe out a people, you have to say in bad faith, in fascist bad faith, and white settler colonialism bad faith is nothing you could call a human being that's lower than a colonizer, a white supremacist. And, you know, Dr. Anthony Montero, in the comrades in Philadelphia, and comrades across the Pan-African diaspora have said that 2024 is the year of James Baldwin. So we'll be studying James Baldwin this year. And I think we have to go to back to Baldwin. Baldwin teaches us what whiteness is. And whiteness is a term, it's a concept that no revolutionary would ever identify with. Was John Brown white? John Brown was a freedom fighter. John Brown was our spiritual grandfather, our great-great-great-grandfather, born on May 9th, 1800. If you remind me later, I can do some John Brown poetry as well. We'll see where the night takes us. But shout out to John Brown, one of the ancestors. But James Baldwin, in the the fire this time, the fire next time, James Baldwin, in many other of his writings and speeches, James Baldwin reminds us that whiteness was created as an obstacle to unity, as an obstacle to freedom. So Yeah, anyone who's up with us, let us know where you are. Is it 2024 yet? Is it still 2023? The West Coast, I think, has another 45 minutes to go. I kind of lost track of time here. And here behind me, you can see John Brown's body and Khalil Gibran. What else do we have up here? We have Pablo Neruda. If you haven't ever checked out El Canto General, the epic poems of Pablo Neruda. So I thought it was important to bring in the new year, with some revolutionary poetry, some anti-capitalist vibes. Harold tells us one of the main commentaries there is about a class distinction that, when you dig below the surface, makes no sense, in my opinion, a critique of capitalism. Where Pilgrim says, I think Malay's American cousin has got a few things to say. Yeah, Malay, truly a sorry, I don't know if I can say the word bastard live, but Javier Milei in Argentina. We'll see how the contradictions intensify in Argentina. Milei is, the ultimate Zionist. Says that he wants to go to occupied Palestine right when his term ends. And oh my goodness, I mean, as I looked at those images from 42nd Street from Times Square, I could not help but think, as female rage spiritually shared with us, what was it like in Gaza 6, 7, 8, 9 hours ago when it struck 2024 for them. And shout out to all forms of resistance in Gaza. I've never seen a David versus a Goliath struggle like the struggle in Gaza in the West Bank and occupied 48. Any form of resistance in Gaza after so many years of occupation, of a blockade, of an airtight, hermetically sealed blockade, and that they could enroll the American people in their genocide and convert the population of the U.S. I don't know what percentage, but a high percentage into cheerleaders of this genocide is extremely, extremely painful. And that's why I posed this question. I think we can do it now. I think we've built up a little bit of momentum, and we can look at, who was the sellout of the year? Who was the sellout of 2023? Many, many worthy candidates. Who comes up for you all? Put in the chat there. Who was the sellout of the year? Who's your candidate? I'm not a YouTuber. It's a craft that I've tried to learn from watching Carlos and Noah and Eddie and so many different voices who enlighten us. But I wanted to build up this momentum a bit. Who is the sellout of the year? Who does it pain us? Who do we feel the most pain around to think that they would turn their back on the Palestinian people? And it implies that we had some type of faith, some type of hope. So far, Bernie Sanders is winning, at least on this stream. Greetings to the comrades in Mexico. Yes, Cristina Almonte, 100%. Our full solidarity to the Sudanese people, our full solidarity to the people in the Congo. I think it's important, the struggle in the Congo is the struggle of Palestine. The struggle in Sudan is the struggle of Palestine. The struggle in Palestine is the struggle against imperialism, against fascism, against capitalism. All these different struggles are interconnected. So when they throw at you, what about the Congo? Don't let that divide us. The history of the Congo, you can't understand the Congo without understanding Belgian colonialism, European colonialism, King Leopold. I've seen estimates of 12 million, of 13 million killed in the Congo. If you follow the continuum of anti-imperialist, anti-colonial struggle in the Congo, surely that number exceeds 12 million. I don't throw out these numbers willy-nilly. About half the population of the Congo is killed in the rubber plantations of the Belgians. To understand the Congo today, we have to go back to that history. I spent New Year's, some boxing comrades were reminding me, we spent the New Year in Senegal, in Dakar, for boxing. This must have been about 9 years ago. They sent me some pictures a few hours ago. So the Sahel and the West African comrades, the Burkina Bay people, the people of Thomas Sankara, and the struggle in Burkina Faso, and the struggle in Mali, and the struggle in Guinea. Very, very exciting. The global class struggle is hot, is hot. There was no such thing as a Cold War. There was a global class struggle. Now it took on the facade. It had the appearance of a showdown between two rival systems. And that was surely there. But at its heart, it was the global class struggle. And it was the Soviet Union lining up with the people of Mozambique and the people of Angola and the people of Guinea and the people of Tanzania and in the Ujamaa movement, the movement for freedom with Julius Nyerere and the people of Tanzania and Zanzibar. The Soviets were in full solidarity with the Cuban Revolution and the Sandinistas. And what was the Cold War? What was the global class struggle? The U.S. got behind apartheid. The U.S. got behind the counter-revolution in Angola. And the U.S. was always behind Zionism. Zionism is not in any way a Jewish creation. No, 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 no. Zionism has nothing to do with Judaism. It's a severe manipulation, a malign twisting and misinterpretation of Jewish history. It's this marginalized ideology that is backed by the British Empire and by the US Empire. Zionism is a US creation. It's an imperialist creation. And so sad to see so many of our sisters and brothers in the class struggle in the Trump camp and and we got to quote Cornel West. Shout out to Dr. Cornel West, and shout out to all the candidates who are anti-capitalist candidates. And Cornel West says, I'm going to Trump country. We have to build with our sisters and brothers in the Trump camp and make sense of all these different things. Real men, real women, real followers of Trump don't support genocide. They just don't know what's happening in Palestine. And if your land was under attack, if your ancestors were under attack, you'd be right there with the people of Palestine. So we're going to keep overcoming the divisions, the racism, the white supremacy. I was looking down at this book, The Saints of Santo Domingo, Dominican Resistance in the Age of Neocolonialism. And, I wrote this book, 2015-ish. I wrote this book inspired by this book. Wasn't the only book I was inspired by, but we got to make these connections, comrades. Revolutionary Yiddish land continues to inspire. So I wanted to draw this connection. The red and black colors of the Dominican, the unfinished Dominican Revolution, the Dominican Republic. Saludos a nuestras compañeras y compañeros de la República Dominicana. Happy New Year's, happy anti-imperialist New Year to the Dominican comrades, all the comrades struggling in the Caribbean. And, I lost so many comrades, the same way that so many of our comrades were incinerated in the Holocaust. I witnessed and lived through the disappearing, the kidnapping, the murder of so many of my Dominican comrades. Amin Abel Hasbun, one of the leaders of the unfinished Dominican Revolution. Look up Amin Abel. He mentored my generation. I get tears in my soul to remember all the comrades who we lost Here's Pablo Ferreira leading a struggle in Navarrete. But the Dominican Revolution, and the cover has a beautiful picture of a Dominican comrade. You know, he's in a showdown with an invading U.S. soldier in 1965. And the U.S. soldier has his automatic weapon, and the Dominican soldier has nothing but his fist. And that's what inspires us. That's why, in a way, we all rock the keffiyeh. We're all underdogs, and that's why you're a member of the Midwestern Marx family. Because in some type of way, you stand with the underdog. You would never stand with the genocides, with the persecutors of genocide, the prosecutors of genocide, the persecutors of the Palestinian people. And who can deny that Palestine is stronger than ever, that this keffiyeh, in Germany, they made it illegal. Maybe we'll read a poem to Germany whose soul is trapped between a Holocaust and a genocide. Maybe we'll read some poems to all of these sellouts who've turned their back on humanity. And that the spirit of revolutionary Yiddish land in some dialectical way is alive with us today. And I've written a lot in these, I've been in the lab. I've been a little bit, absent publicly perhaps, because I've been in the lab. I've been producing. I've been writing. We've lived through 85, 86 days of a cruel denial of life. And with 3 decades of experience in the class struggle, at least conscious, active, I would say the moment I started shadowboxing in the womb, I was in the class struggle. The moment my grandmother was humiliated in the 1930s and 40s, I was in the class struggle. But I've never seen something like what we're living through right now in Palestine, and spiritually, historically, ancestrally, it's taken its toll on us. We've had to take care of our mental health. This has come up with the classes that the Institute continues to run. We're up to our 12th class. Thursday, same bat time, same bat channel. I got to get the Noah materialist pen. Anyone who hasn't joined us, come on. The classes are open to the people. Thursday at 8 p.m. since right after October 7th. We've been there. Let me give you some of the flavor of October 7th. Let me give you some of the flavor. Because Zionism has decontextualized October 7th. Zionism, capitalism, poor fools. They want us to think that somehow October 7th came out of nowhere, as if there wasn't an October 6th, and an October 5th, and an October 7th in 2022, in 2021. They gave birth inevitably. What did Bob Marley teach us? You can't fool all of the people all of the time. You cannot genocide all of the people all of the time. The people will stand up. The people will strike back. Frantz Fanon. We have to go back to Frantz Fanon. The Panthers said, we are Marxist Fanonists. We are Marxist, Leninist, Maoist Fanonists. Frantz Fanon. If you haven't read Fanon, do yourself the biggest favor of 2024 and order yourself some Fanon. Frantz Fanon taught us about the colonial boomerang of violence. These Zionists thought they could humiliate and ethnically cleanse, and an indigenous people would just stay quiet? For 75 long, interminable years, Palestine has been denied, has been occupied. And if you haven't seen the show with my brother Amos came on roughly, mid-October. His family went there trying to live this Zionist dream, and Amos And Amos's father was part of the army of the British Mandate, which overnight in 1948 became the Israeli army, and they fought back and they fled. And no one talks about the true history of Palestine, you know. So join us on Thursday night. So I'm going to bring up some poetry right now, so I can share with you where my heart, where my anti-imperialist ideas have been. So I wrote this piece, which contextualizes October 7th. And I start with an intro, one of my favorite mentors, Gary Hicks. If you haven't checked out the poetry and the ideas of my spiritual father, you know, Gary Hicks, look at these Vietnamese kids on tanks of victory. My peeps, children of Uncle Ho, my heroes. The kids on the tanks, roughly half my age. The kids who I, inmate 33602-133, prayed for victory every day of my imprisonment. Yes, they won, and we won too. So that's former political prisoner Gary Hicks, who wrote that piece. He wrote this piece in tribute to the Vietnamese resistance in the early 1970s when he was imprisoned in Pennsylvania because he opposed the U.S.'s genocidal war in Vietnam. I want to just bring a flame here, a candle on. Just want it to be in my background as a tribute to the ancestors of Yiddish land, our sisters and brothers who have fought against Israeli and U.S. occupation in Gaza. Just wanted to make sure that flame was burning for me there, right in front of the prophet Khalil Gibran's work. So that's Gary Hicks. Gary passed away a year ago. Incredible communist. So it's good as we transition to this new year across the world to feel our ancestors present, those who have all transitioned to the spirit verse. I'll keep going with my poem here after Gary's intro. October 7th. Let me scroll down. October 7th. Some fearless Apaches, armed with justice and spears, devoid of well-adjusted fears, robbed of human tears, disciples of the Battle of Algiers. After 75 interminable years, the Apache children, our children, the children of humanity, broke out of the reservation. This is the first canto. You should have seen them. Kids, our kids, humanity's most forgotten kids, steeled by generational trauma, 3/4 of a century of displacement, of degrading displacement drama, synthesized and crystallized in compassionate, cold, penetrating brown eyes. Breathe deep and you can still see them, for their acts were eternal, intelligible only to Habash's inferno. Epics burst asunder, cloud bursts from below of class thunder. The Holy Land corrupted. The ancestors had erupted. So before we go to canto number 2, just to reflect a little bit on the poem, it was just so painful to see so many people hoodwinked and bamboozled, duped, not understanding the context of what happened now, October 7th, almost 3 months ago. I mean, what did Lenin teach us? There are years when very little happens, and there are days when decades happen. And October 7th was 7.5 decades crystallized. And our job as the poets of the people, as the scribes, as the griots, as Marxist Leninists, our job is to make it plain, as Malcolm taught us, to make it plain. So let me go to some of the comments here, and then we'll keep going with some poetry and building up a bit to the sellout of the year. Harold says 1,000 US, $1,000 for rent. Wow, where could I find that in the USA? I can't find that for a studio apartment wherein a person's fart immediately fills the room. That's not even accounting for electricity or water or other regular expenses. Ben Chesterman says New York studio, 8,000 US to buy that cheap. Ghost Nest, I would like to let someone know that the Capital 4 link is broken on the Midwestern Library site page. Thanks for letting us know. Yeah, and anyone who's out there feeling, generous here at the Institute, everything comes from our hearts. We don't receive a dime for the work that we do. Thank you, Alexis, for the gratitude. I finally caught alive. Yeah, it's kind of an unorthodox hour to go live. Ben says borderline communism sucks taxation theft. It enriches political class globally. Yeah. So shout out to George Habash. Shout out to all the Palestinian leadership. So why don't I do another canto of the poem, and then we can go to Instagram. I'm going to read through. I haven't read yet. I'm excited to read who the people think is the sellout of the year for 2023. A little bit more poetry, and then we'll go to Instagram. All right. Canto number 2. Dickens' London drama. Albert Mimi's Ghetto Saga. General Vo Nigel Giap's Blueprint. Ho Chi Minh, Heaven Sent. The children are the lions who pry open the jaws of death. The Palestinian people, cut off from their own Mediterranean, they sailed north over fiery horizons. 3 kilometers of Navy and Coast Guard humiliation gripped their souls. When it seems the whole world is against you, in the international community, quote unquote, aka the international criminals, ignore your pain. When the behemoths refuse to recognize your existence, and existence is resistance. Even at times you yourselves contemplate, how much more can you give to humanity's ascent out of the 2023 Auschwitz? So those are the first 2 sections or cantos of a poem I've been in the lab working on. When it's all written, when we look back, we'll know who stood firm on October 7th with the oppressed of the world, and we'll know who turned their backs on the oppressed of the world. And that's what motivated me to write this this poem and a book that I'm working on for the Institute. All right, let's turn our attention to, without further ado, turn our attention to YouTube. Hit up your comrades. If you haven't seen this yet, we're going to look at who are the sellouts of the year. How do I hit play here? Why is it not playing? Oh, there we go. As 2023 draws to a close, who is the sellout of the year? There's many strong candidates. Richie Torres, sellout, fake, professional, politician from the South Bronx, selling out to APAC, selling out to these genocides. We got Mayor Eric Adams, fine sellout indeed. We got Ziggy Marley, Bob Marley rolling in his grave. Ziggy Marley has joined the Babylon system. Who is your sellout of the year? DJ Khaled. DJ Khaled is a clear candidate. Who's your sellout of the year for 2023? All right, so let's read the results. The sellouts of the year. When I put this out half a day ago, I threw out a few teasers. Who's the sellout of the year? Van Jones, Bernie, DJ Khaled, Eric Adams, Ziggy Marley, Richie Torres. If you don't know who somebody is, you know, we can fill it in. Richie Torres is he's a congressman here from the Bronx, and he's like fully in the pocket of AIPAC, and it's very disgusting. He's Puerto Rican and LGBTQ, and it's like, how could you stand with the oppressor? Palestine has taught us so much about ourselves and so many. Who is your pick for the 2023 Sellout of the Year award? Spirit Wagon says all of them tie. My brother Mays says cancel them all. Profesora Ana Flores says Biden. Shout out to the Peruvian people who are de pie en resistencia. Esteban says Dina Boluarte for sure, Professor. That is just personal. Add to that Vladimir Cerrón and the entire Peru Libre clique, who are currently conspiring with the right, but have abandoned a poor, ignorant teacher who they elevated to the heights of popularity, but discarded him like basura, trash, the minute he stumbled. Woo! Candela, candela, candela. I felt that in my heart of hearts. Thank you. Your work is okay. Free Palestine. Bernie and DJ Khaled are the top sellouts. You can quantify the cost of Torres' soul down to the dollar. So a vote here, a local Bronx vote. Bernie, baby. Bernie 100%. Bernie. Wait, what did Ziggy Marley do? Ziggy Marley married a Zionist, and Ziggy Marley stands with Israel. Well, we have some replies here. Let's see. Someone here says, why that's a problem. No access to data, then you really don't know. Keep it pushing with your opinion of what's right and wrong. Have a seat. From the river to the sea. Shout out to our comrades who've gone to jail just for saying from the river to the sea. Human beings should be free. So more, curse words for Ziggy Marley. Amal Clooney, fill me in. I don't know about Amal Clooney, so let me know. Let's see here. Whack, she does more for humanity than you can pray for. Got to go with DJ Khaled. The rest are runners up. Yeah, DJ Khaled. Yo, DJ Coward. It looks like it's a tie. Is it a tie between Bernie and Malala? I don't know enough. I don't know about Malala. I got to educate myself. Oh, Fetterman. Poor boy Fetterman. Poor boy Fetterman. Yup. Pennsylvania Congressman Fetterman. Good candidate. Thank you to Shouterville. Bernie by far, simply based on how many years he had in the game. DJ Khaled, his blood is Palestinian. I don't know, folks. This is 10 hours ago. I don't know how many comments there are, but it looks like DJ Khaled and Bernie are going to win. Well, you know, Genocide Joe is not a sellout. He's doing exactly what he was trained to do. And Nakara Taro explains just that. Genocide Joe didn't sell out. He was already sold out from day one. Genocide Biden is the quintessential establishment shill and always has been. Speak on it, Nakara Taro. I didn't know Bernie had birthright. I would have never support someone like that. I wish I had known. Oh, I don't know. Let's research. I didn't know that he had a connection to birthright. More people saying Biden. To say Biden would imply that you somehow had false consciousness and thought that Biden wasn't a ruling class politician. Egypt and the Arab regimes not doing a damn thing to end the genocide on Gaza and instead actively support it. Yeah. Great candidate and point. Yemen is the only country with a backbone. Speak on it. Lulu says, Iran, Lebanon, been in the game supporting Palestine for a decade or so now. Oh, much longer, 75 years. Jesus. I mean, the Iranian people, of course, since 1979, the Iranian state. Again, access to data you don't have. Oh, this is just some troll. It is good to have enemies. Fetterman, another vote for Fetterman. I gotta go either with DJ Khaled. He's Palestinian, so he's got to be the biggest Vende Patria. Thank you, Manuel Llaneras. The U.S. Oh, the U.S. is just a supporter of genocide since what? 1492, 1620. Man, John Fetterman, honorable mention. Geez, so many shaking my head. 100%. Should have done round 2 of polls. It's quite a field. DJ Khaled and Bernie are tied. Must be said, Bernie never fails to reach new lows. Of course, from his endorsement of Hillary Clinton in 2016, the writing was on the wall, but his repeat in 2020 with Biden was rubbing everyone's nose in it. The grifting was unashamed. Then his refusal to even pay lip service to a ceasefire in Gaza was his final kick in the nuts for the diehards still clinging to political revolution scam. The man's a genius. Well, there's a lot. I don't know if I'm going to get through all of them. Y'all let me know. I'm starting to get a little bit tired. Let's read a few more, but I don't think I can. There's a lot. Yeah, people are very upset about Ziggy Marley. We owe Ziggy a poem, don't we? I'm going to come back on screen here. Wow. Bernie Cuckers in 2006. Jenny Lee tells us he was officially named Bernie Cuckers. Wow. So it looks like congratulations. Parabéns. Felicidades. Honorable mention to John Fetterman for sellout of the year. But we have a winner. We have 2 winners. Bernie Sanders and DJ Khaled. Your sellouts of the year. Truly shameful when the underdog calls, when the ancestors call. History will remember where DJ Khaled was, and he's over there with his family in some crystalline waters. What about your Palestinian family, homie? What about them, Habibi? How can you turn your back on life, for hundreds of millions or whatever it is that they give you? Pathetic, sad, heartless, soulless. This flame is for our people in Palestine who are stronger than ever, and for revolutionary Yiddish land, stronger than ever. This has never been a Jewish Muslim thing. It has nothing to do with this. This is the colonizer and the colonized, and us revolutionaries, we can't help but fantasize. about those days that will come when we'll be able to put all the sellouts, all the lackeys, all the corporate criminals, all the Zionists, all the genocidaires, all the killers, all the assassins and the war criminals, from Herzog to Gallant to Netanyahu to Biden to Lloyd Austin to Anthony Blinken on the genocidal shuttle diplomacy, when we put them behind proletarian bars. And comrades, don't ever lose sight that that day will come when, in the phase of the dictatorship of the proletariat, in the phase of socialism, we will erect proletarian prisons. We don't glorify prisons. We don't want prisons. But until we can truly educate and declassify, déclasser the ruling class, we can't trust them. They're going to try to regroup like every counter-revolution. Look at the Cuban counter-revolution. Look at the Sandinista counter-revolution. Look at the Bolivian counter-revolution. Look at the Venezuelan Bolivarian counter-revolution. What do? They go to D.C. like true worms and gusanos and escualidos, and they regroup and they try to overthrow those revolutions. So we do not have any illusions that we will build proletarian jail cells for the Bidens, for the Netanyahus. Now, in the Russian Revolution, the leadership of the Soviets, they debated these very things when they took power in October of 2017. I'm sorry, 1917. What did they do with the Tsar and the Tsar's family and all the sellouts and all the the dangerous leaders of the opposing classes of the ruling class? So we got something for these sellouts. We have no illusions. We're pacifism is the pathology. They tell us to turn the other cheek. They would tell Rachel Maddow and MSNBC would tell Nat Turner to turn his other cheek. And they would tell the Palestinians up against the genocide to turn the other cheek. And Palestine has taught us so much in 2023. Palestine separates the real from the fake, the superficial from the factual, the soulless from the soul, the heartless from the heart. Palestine has showed us who are the revolutionaries, who are the Marxist-Leninists, who are the anti-imperialists. Palestine shows us who the liberals are and what the liberals are made out of. What liberals stood up for Palestine? Any liberal who stood up for Palestine is not a liberal. Felicidades, welcome to 2024 and welcome back to humanity. You're not a liberal. If you stood up for Palestine, you're an anti-imperialist, and what Palestine has taught us is that our people in the United States do not have anti-colonial training, that they couldn't appreciate October 7th in an anti-colonial context. And that's the educational work that we have to do. Keep fighting for Palestine. No matter how isolated you feel, you're not alone. And let me know what part of the United States, what part of the divided snakes of America are you in? What part of occupied Turtle Island? What part of the United States are you in? Throw it in the chat there. No matter where you are, don't ever feel isolated, because humanity stands with Palestine. Look at Turkey, look at Pakistan, look at the Middle East, look at West Asia, look at South America, look at the Caribbean. Look at the mass mobilization of humanity in the belly of the beast in London, in Paris, in New York. Everyday civil disobedience. Shout out to Jewish Voice for Peace. Shout out to Not in Our Name. Shout out to If Not Now. Shout out to all the Jewish voices anti-Zionist voices. Shout out to our comrades in Michigan and Illinois and Iowa, the West Coast, as the West Coast prepares to bring in the new year. Yeah, I'll begin to sign off. I'm going to go back to writing. Thank you to everybody that keeps this flame lit for Palestine. We're not alone. Gaza is not alone. Gaza is not alone. The global class struggle, the vast majority, the bulk of humanity is with Palestine. The bulk of humanity goes to sleep with nightmares, Zionist nightmares. Yeah, what are your New Year's revolutions? What are your New Year resolutions? What do you pledge in 2024? I pledge more poetry, more resistance, more truth for these Zionist vampires. You know what the Zionists do? They ignore us and they yes, yeah, your sanity is my sanity, female rage. And thank you for being here because your words mean so much. And every Thursday at 8 p.m., that's what we tell one another. We're there for one another. We're there to keep one another sober and in the struggle. We're revolutionary optimists. Imagine 2.3 million people in Gaza who fight dehydration, who fight starvation, who fight the U.S. bombs that drop upon children. And 48 hours ago, Biden again fast-tracked how many hundreds of millions of dollars of weapons for a genocide. What's going to happen in 2024 with this election, with these elections? There's no democracy. Democracy is them mocking we. Democracy is them mocking we. Democracy is them mocking us, giving us the facade of democracy. Female Rage says they're going to read more Marx, Engels, and Lenin. And we want to announce here at the Institute that early in 2024, depending on the pace, the meter of the class struggle in Palestine, of the anti-colonial struggle, we will be initiating part 2 of Reform or Revolution, a Marxist view of revolutions past. And shout out to the 60 plus students who joined the Institute back in late August for Reform or Revolution Part 1. Depending on the pace of the Palestinian national liberation struggle, we will be initiating Part 2. So, comrades, free Palestine. Thank you. You don't know what it means to us. Every word of support, every dollar of support. I'm excited in 2024. I don't know when, but I'm headed west. I want to go to the Midwest. Shout out to our comrades in Ohio and Illinois and Kansas and Michigan and the greater Midwest. I want to go out there and learn. I'm a city boy myself. I'm from Brockton, Massachusetts, and the Bronx, New York, and Yonkers, New York, uptown, Washington Heights, here in Manhattan. But I want to head out to the Midwest and learn and participate and break bread with those who are in the Trump camp, those working class individuals who are fed up with the swamp, fed up, disgusted by this system, and we got to break bread. And what do we have in common? Whose side are we on? Are we on Israel's side? Are we on Palestine's side? Why? And as you begin to chip away and heighten these contradictions, and that's what we have to do at every moment, we have to heighten the contradictions. We have to show our people that we're not interested in bombing children in Palestine. No way. That is not in our name. So I see an active chat here. Jenny Lynn says, shout out to the Ohio gang. And just proud, very proud to be a part of this working class Marxist Leninist family here with the Institute. So we want to keep creating more versions of the International. That's definitely on the horizon, but for now, we're going to take it out with this classic version of the International. All power to the Palestinian people, all power to the underdog, all power to the oppressed, all power to the sons and daughters of Nelson Mandela, of Chris Hani, of Stephen Biko in South Africa, all power to the Puerto Rican people, los boricuas que están ahí, los hijos, las hijas de Don Pedro, Albizu Campos, Roy Brown, Vibes, the Taínos, every anti-colonial struggle. A victory in Puerto Rico is a victory for Palestine. Shout out to our comrades in Derry, in the 6 counties that fight for 32 county United Republic of Ireland. The Irish have been so strong, standing with their distant relatives in Palestine. Shout out to Euskal area, the Basque country, all the anti-colonial struggles. Shout out to everybody in the belly of the beast in India, opposing Hindu supremacy, and in Modi, who sold out and stands with Zionism. Shout out to our Filipino comrades in a showdown against Bong Marcos. Dictatorship has returned to the Philippines. Shout out to the comrades in Russia standing up to NATO and the US in this horrific proxy war where the Ukrainians have been used and duped. And how many of our Ukrainian sisters and brothers are trapped in that horrific NATO-US proxy war on Russian sovereignty and Russian geopolitical interests. Shout out to all the comrades across Europe trapped in the belly of the beast who still take the streets for Palestine. Shout out to all these keffiyehs and Palestinian flags. Shout out to the global class struggle.
Cannot be solved without a radical redistribution of political and economic